Welcome back to Wild Mind, Rooted Heart. I am so happy you are here. Today's episode has been living in my heart for a while because I don't think I realized just how much I've changed until recently to this depth and this level and layer that I am at from where I started. Like I haven't even processed the time. And healing is funny like that because sometimes it isn't this huge cinematic breakthrough. Sometimes you only notice it because one day you respond differently to something that would have completely consumed you a few years ago. And I think my healing journey really started and began with reparenting myself, not because somebody told me to, not even because I knew what reparenting was, but because somewhere along the way I realized the voice in my head maybe wasn't actually mine. When I made a mistake, there was already a script running. When I wasn't productive enough, when I rested, when I felt emotional, when I didn't meet impossible expectations, there was just this automatic commentary that played in my mind. And for years, I assumed that was just me. But what if it wasn't? What if so much of the way we speak to ourselves was borrowed? Borrowed from childhood, borrowed from people around us, borrowed from survival. Not intentionally, but it was just absorbed. So I want to ask you something. When you make a mistake, whose voice do you hear? Is it yours? Or does it sound familiar? Take a second with that question. Because sometimes healing begins the moment we realize we've been carrying around someone else's words for years. That was actually one of the biggest wake-up calls I remember having, I feel like pretty early on in therapy. I was like, I'll say a year in, I don't know, maybe less than a year in, maybe before that, I don't know. But I just remember that being mentioned or brought to the surface. And I remember exploring that. And then once I started really like listening and paying attention, I was like, who did I hear say that? Who used to say that to me? Oh. And then for me, it was like I had to remove layers of people's commentary, like consecutively just keep going because this person would respond to these things. And I realized I absorbed different responses for different parts of myself in different phases and all the things. I was just always looking for like, how am I, what's right? What's right? And then most of my time, I did my best to operate again outwardly to not be like those people. But I didn't realize I was being that way to myself. So something that really woke that up within me after starting therapy, opening all of these doors and stuff that I thought were locked up, thrown away, hidden, nobody could reach them. But you fuck around and you find out that it's okay. Okay. Like it's hard to think about things and talk about things and work through them. And then to like the next phases of letting that go and how do you want to embody new things and what do you want to replace the old things with and thought patterns and all the things. But what really started it for me, and I believe I've mentioned this before, but I think one of my greatest teachers ended up being my cat. And I know that probably sounds ridiculous if you've never had a pet that completely cracked your heart open, but hear me out. When I first got her, it surprised me with how, and it made me realize too, because I like ended my last relationship and that relationship was, I absorbed someone not being kind to me repeatedly and believing that that person loved me. But like, how can you love someone if you like act as if you hate them, right? You learn. I've done all this rewiring with all of that. But also when you are conditioned that way growing up, that's why I'm saying it's good to take a little break sometimes and do the work, pour into yourself if you need to. Not everybody has to go as deep as I did, and I do, but I enjoy being out there, just lost in my thoughts. But when I got her, I realized I didn't love my initial responses to her. But I get so mad that she was on the counter. And then I'm like, I went through this whole process of like, okay, I'll wipe the counters down before I cook anything, do anything, whatever. But that's what cats do. Your home is their space. It's their home too. And so I would just get mad about like something like that. I would get so frustrated because when I first got her, especially, she's toned it down a little bit, like as she gets older, but she still is very clingy. And so when I first got her, I was also working from home. And she would just have to be on me, crawling on me, laying on my shoulder, laying on my neck, trying to climb on my head, lay in my lap, lay on my keyboard. Like she had to be all over me. And I would get overstimulated because I'm also like on calls dealing with people yelling at me all day. Like having her helped me be like, I don't want to talk to her. I don't want to talk to her like that. Like she doesn't deserve to be talked to like that. She's a sweet, precious, like little angel baby. And so I worked on changing my talking, like how I speak and respond to her. And then I noticed when I would hang out with new people, the way that I responded to them was even kinder too, especially after what I had just been through. Yeah. So I changed how I talk to her. And then like within, I don't know, it was almost immediate where I was like, oh, I literally was like, I don't like how I'm responding to her. And I remember talking about it in therapy and I was like, does that sound crazy? And, she of course was like, no. And then just like let me blurt out everything else. And yeah, Maisie helped heal me. I took 9 months to decide to get her from my aunt, to bring her home. I mean, I like over that time got like little things to get myself ready for her. I watched so many videos and read so much stuff and just looked at her picture probably every day. So when I say that's my baby, that's my baby. Like in my own, like on my own, like, and I read something that said some people, like when you have a pet, sometimes it's like a child that made its way to you that couldn't in human form. And that's why some people have super strong connections with some of their pets. And I was like, it's kind of beautiful because I feel like that's what a lot of people say with becoming a parent is it changes how you see the world and you see everything. And then I don't know, I got my cat. I was like, I just don't want to talk. I don't want to talk to her like that anymore. So then I was like, well, yeah, because, she'd get nervous, she'd get scared, or if something happened, if she was sleepy girl, like I didn't call her lazy. I didn't call her dramatic when she would get scared or like spaz out. Did I get a little nervous? Yes. But like if she made a mess or got sick, I didn't tell her she was a burden. Like I spoke with patience and curiosity and gentleness and learning to, it's so funny because I'm usually pretty good in a crisis. Until I know that I still am because I am able to reach out to someone when I have to, but I think it's also because I know that I have no choice. But I remember like a health scare I had with her and I was hysterically crying. I was so scared. I was like, if something happens to her, I don't know if I can handle, like, I won't survive. Like, I'm not going to be okay. It's going to be all my fight. I was just, fear was taking over. But I was able to calm myself down and be like, I need to tackle this situation. I freaked out and then what do we need to do? And so learning to be kind and patient, like with her, even when I was terrified, I also knew that I had gained a skill in something that the adults around me did not have. I just remember how I became sweeter to her. And it did kind of naturally make me start to reflect and be like, well, if she gets talked to like that, why don't I? It made it feel safer for me to change my inner dialogue, inner monologue, inner critic, whatever you want to call it. Because I was like, why am I worthy of less compassion than my cat? And that question changed everything. Because if love naturally came out of me toward this tiny little creature, maybe I could learn to redirect some of that towards myself. Definitely not overnight, definitely not perfectly, but intentionally. And that's when I started paying attention to my inner dialogue. Not just what I was saying, but how I was saying it. Because words matter. Our brains are listening. Our nervous systems are listening. The stories we repeat eventually become the lens we experience life through. So I started changing the script. Not fake positivity, not pretending everything was okay, just speaking to myself like someone I actually cared about. And the shift happened in my body first. People ask me all the time if changing your self-talk actually works. For me, the first thing that changed wasn't entirely even my thoughts. It was my body. I used to carry this constant feeling, almost like this pit in my stomach, this low-grade anxiety. Like I was always waiting for the next thing to go wrong, waiting to disappoint someone, waiting to fail, waiting for the other shoe to drop. It became so normal that I didn't even realize I was living in it. Now, I actually notice when that feeling comes back. Not because it's stronger, because now it's unfamiliar. It isn't my home anymore. And I think that's something people don't talk about enough. Healing isn't necessarily feeling amazing every day. Sometimes healing is simply recognizing when you've left a place you used to live in all the time. I have noticed this quite a bit in quite a few different ways. I know that I started by, like I said before, going on walks outside. I started just breathing, like just telling myself, because for whatever, I just have spent my life so having to look out for danger that I had to, as I was rewiring and regulating my nervous system, as I was working through trauma, as I was like being triggered every week and working through that and trying to still work full time, still working full time and being a good, social and trying to take care of my health. And I was just doing all of these things, being burnt out at every single end of which way I turned. But I have no other choice but to keep going. So I would go on walks. I started listening to some podcasts. And what's funny is there was one podcast I listened to that really opened my mind. And what's even more funny or interesting is that it was two men, and their personalities kind of like irked me a little bit, but the conversations they were having, it helped me learn, like change being so sensitive to other people's tones as well. Cause I was just like, all right, I don't have to receive it that way. Like, even if you could feel them being a little like aggressive, I didn't have to receive it that way. I could just receive the information. So I would listen to that a lot on my walks, and it opened my mind like in a totally different way. And then it got a little too for me. But it served its purpose, and it helped me a lot just to think differently. And anyway, so yeah, it was interesting that on my walks, I did that. And then I did the method to help anxiety and help you be present, because I was starting on my gratitude journey. I was working on inner peace. Like I was trying to be grounded, like just feel not so chaotic. I've always dreamt and wished for peace, and I had to figure out what is that? What is that? What does that feel like? And then realizing, oh, I've had such small amounts of this, but it's been the feeling I've secretly been searching for. I can find it and build it within myself. And I now have ways to access that within myself. And then you're better able to be open to being around other people that feel that way. What? When you really become content with being yourself and who you are? What? Like, it's pretty cool. Life when you keep going. Sincerely, the girly that didn't know. I just didn't know how long I'd be here. So I'm going to be 35, and I always get very reflective and emotional around my birthday. But another thought, and something else I've realized lately, is I don't want a fast life anymore. I've lived enough of that. always rushing, always hustling, always trying to outrun the next problem, always living like if I could just get through this week, then I'd finally relax. Except another week always came. Another thing always happened. And eventually I realized maybe my nervous system never wanted speed. Maybe it wanted consistency, peace, predictability, gentleness. I don't want a life where I'm constantly sprinting. I want slow mornings, conversations that aren't rushed, time outside, a home that feels peaceful, relationships that feel safe instead of confusing. And honestly, I think that's also why dreaming has been so difficult for me. When you've spent so much of your life surviving, dreaming feels risky. Because survival teaches you to ask, what can I realistically expect? Healing slowly teaches you to ask, what do I actually want? Those are two completely different questions. And here's a question for you. When was the last time you dreamed without immediately talking yourself out of it? What would you want if fear wasn't making the first decision? And then something happened recently. The other day at work, someone had been having a really stressful time. And I looked up at the sky and just said, wow, the clouds are really beautiful today. And then I laughed and said, sorry, I guess I just have to find something good when I'm feeling bad. And a few years ago, I probably wouldn't have even pointed out noticing the sky. My brain would have been too busy scanning for danger, too busy replaying old conversations, too busy worrying about everything. And her response really stuck with me. She said, yeah, that sounds nice and all, but a few clouds aren't going to cut it. And honestly, she's right. The clouds aren't going to fix your problems. Nature isn't going to pay your bills. A sunset won't erase trauma. Watching birds won't undo heartbreak. But that's not the point. The point is that your nervous system deserves evidence that life isn't only danger, that beauty exists at the same time as grief, that peace can exist alongside stress, that hope can exist alongside uncertainty. Healing isn't denying reality. It's expanding your ability to notice what's still beautiful inside it. Sometimes that beauty is a flower growing through a crack in the sidewalk. Sometimes it's your pet sleeping peacefully beside you. Sometimes it's just really beautiful clouds. And maybe that's enough for today. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Healing didn't make me ignore the darkness. It expanded my ability to notice the light while darkness was still there. I still have hard days. I still get anxious or depressed. I still have moments where old patterns try to pull me back. The difference is I don't live there anymore. I've become someone who notices, who pauses, who speaks more gently to herself, who gives herself permission to slow down, who understands that healing isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming someone your younger self would feel safe with. Maybe reparenting isn't becoming the parent you wish you'd had. Maybe it's becoming the safe place you've been searching for all along. So this week, I want to leave you with a few questions. Whose voice do I hear when I criticize myself? How would I speak to someone I deeply love if they were in my shoes? What is one sentence I can replace my inner critic with this week? What small, free thing brought me peace today? And what dream have I convinced myself is too unrealistic? And who taught me that? Thank you for spending this time with me. If this resonated, I would love to hear what came up for you. Sometimes sharing our stories reminds someone else they're not as alone as they thought. Until next time, keep your wild mind curious, your rooted heart open, and don't forget to look up once in a while. Sometimes healing is waiting for you in the clouds.